All right, let's talk about something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's not. It's happening inside billions of us right now. We're talking about a tiny, microscopic puppet master that just might be pulling our strings.
I know. It sounds like a crazy question, but it's at the very heart of a massive scientific debate. Could a parasite, one that's super common and often carried by our cats, actually be, well, influencing our minds? Making us more impulsive? Maybe even more prone to taking big risks?
And look, this isn't some rare, exotic thing we're talking about. This parasite infects an estimated 1/3 of all humans on the planet. That's billions of people. Seriously, the odds are pretty good that either you or someone you know is carrying it this very moment, and you'd probably have no idea.
So what is it? It's a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii, or T. gondii for short. For the longest time, we all just figured it was basically harmless to most people. But now, a whole body of research is suggesting it could be a hidden force shaping some of our most human behaviors. So today, we're going to act like detectives. We're going to look at the evidence for and against and see if we can figure out what's really going on.
So first up, let's open the case file on the side that has everyone so captivated. The evidence that suggests this tiny organism can actually control the brain.
To get it, you've got to understand its life cycle. It's kind of brilliant in a creepy way. See, T. gondii can only sexually reproduce inside a cat's gut. The eggs, which are called oocysts, get shed in the cat's feces. Then an animal like a mouse or a rat comes along and ingests them. From there, the parasite sets up shop in the rodent's brain, forming little cysts, and it just waits. It's waiting for that mouse to get eaten by a cat so the whole cycle can start over.
But think about it. The parasite needs that mouse to get eaten. So how does it make that happen? This is where it gets crazy. It seems to actually rewire the rodent's brain, effectively deleting its natural, hardwired fear of cats. Some studies have even shown that infected rats become attracted to the smell of cat pee. They call this phenomenon fatal attraction, and it's the absolute cornerstone of this whole mind control hypothesis. Okay, that sounds pretty unbelievable, right? I mean, how on earth can a single-celled organism hijack something as complex as fear? Well, scientists think they've pinpointed the chemical weapon it uses.
And it all comes down to this one molecule, dopamine. You've definitely heard of it. It's a super powerful neurotransmitter that basically runs our brain's reward and motivation systems. It's what helps us decide if taking a risk is worth it. You could say it's one of the main control dials in our brain. And here's the kicker. Researchers discovered that the T. gondii parasite itself has the genetic tools to make an enzyme that's crucial for producing dopamine. So those little cysts it forms in the brain, they essentially become tiny, unauthorized dopamine factories, just pumping the stuff out and totally changing the local brain chemistry. This is the biological mechanism they think explains its mind-bending powers.
Okay, so that's the story in rodents. But what about us humans? We're what's called a dead-end host. I mean, we don't usually get eaten by cats, right? So if this dopamine hijacking is happening in our brains, what would it even look like? Some researchers think it might be an evolutionary side effect, and they've started to link it to some really surprising human behaviors. Since we know dopamine is a huge player in controlling our impulses, scientists started asking a new question. Could this parasitic dopamine pump be linked to things like impulsive aggression in people? So they put it to the test.
And just look at this. A 2016 study compared 3 different groups of people. You had your healthy controls, then a group with other psychiatric conditions, and finally, a group diagnosed with something called intermittent explosive disorder, or IED, which is all about extreme, out-of-nowhere aggression. The results were pretty jaw-dropping. In the healthy group, about 9% had the parasite, but that number shoots up to almost 22% in the group with IED.
And the connections to risky behavior don't even stop there. Another huge study found that people who were infected with T. gondii were 2.65 times more likely to get into a traffic accident. The theory here is that the parasite might be creating these tiny delays in our reaction time, or maybe just lowering our perception of risk, with potentially deadly results out on the road.
So the case for mind control seems pretty strong, doesn't it? You've got a biological mechanism, the dopamine, and you've got these correlations with aggression and risk-taking. But in science, just because two things are correlated doesn't mean one causes the other. And that's when a huge landmark study came along and threw a giant wrench in the works. So also in 2016, a different team of scientists published the results from a massive study. They were using data from something called the Dunedin study, which is this incredible project that has followed over 1,000 people in New Zealand, literally from birth into their late 30s.
This gave them the perfect chance to really put the T. gondii claims to the ultimate test.
And when they crunched the numbers, comparing the people with the parasite to those without it, the results were, well, nothing. They found no statistically significant link to schizophrenia, nothing for major depression, not even for having an adult criminal conviction. If you look at the p-values over on the right, that's what tells you if a result is meaningful. You're looking for a number below 0.05, and as you can see, these aren't even in the same ballpark.
And it wasn't just about those big diagnoses. These researchers looked at everything. Personality traits, IQ scores, memory tests, reaction time, you name it. And across the board, it was the same story. The profiles of the people carrying the parasite were pretty much identical to the profiles of those who weren't.
Okay, so where does that leave us? On the one hand, we have studies suggesting a powerful link to aggression and risk. On the other hand, we have this massive, carefully designed study that finds basically nothing. So what is going on?
How can both of these things be true at the same time? It's a great question, and figuring it out gets right to the heart of how science actually works. The answer, of course, isn't so simple, but it is really fascinating.
You know, the whole debate really boils down to this classic problem, correlation versus causation. Is it that the parasite gets into your brain and causes you to take more risks, or could it be the other way around? Could people who are already risk takers just be more likely to do things that get them infected in the first place, like eating undercooked meat, or maybe not being as strict about hygiene? Most studies just can't tell the difference.
So, scientists have a few ideas for why we're seeing such different results. It might be about who you're studying. Looking at a clinical group of people with IED is very different from looking at the general population. There's also something called publication bias. Exciting, scary results just tend to get published more often than boring, we found nothing results. And it could be purely biological. There are different strains of the parasite out there, and of course we all have different genetics and immune systems that might react in totally different ways. So at the end of the day, there probably isn't one simple answer here. The effect of T. gondii might be real, but maybe it only affects certain people with specific genetic vulnerabilities who get infected with a particular strain. The truth, as it so often is in science, is probably somewhere in the messy, complicated middle.
Which brings us all the way back to that big central question. While T. gondii probably isn't the all-powerful mind controller it's sometimes made out to be, all this research does force us to think about a really unsettling idea, that maybe our behaviors, our choices, even our personalities are being influenced by invisible forces, ancient passengers that have been riding along with us for thousands of years. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who's actually calling the shots?